In autumn of 2022, this Reddit user posted this survey.
How great do you think Starfield will be?
Here's the breakdown in a pie chart. So, I agree with about half of you. The gameplay will be average at best, and will still be Bethesda's best game yet. Everyone wants to know, will it be good? Well, we can learn a little from the gameplay reveal, but we can learn a lot from this game's parents, Mrs. Skyrim and Mr. Fallout IV. Let's start with the user interface. One of the most uncontroversial statements about Skyrim is that its UI sucks.
Nailed it.
My evidence? The Sky UI mod, whose existence not only indicates someone thought it was so bad they built a fix for it, it's also the second highest downloaded Skyrim mod, next to the unofficial Skyrim patch, intended to eventually fix every bug with Skyrim Special Edition. Sky UI has over 279,000 endorsements and nearly 4 million downloads. Skyrim's UI feels like an afterthought. They had so much stuff in their game and were probably adding assets by the day as they neared completion. Categories and stacks may have just been the easiest way to do it, and I get that. The problem is, the rest of us had to deal with the fallout. 4 years later, Bethesda released Fallout 4 and demonstrated they'd learned nothing.
Nailed it again.
I mean, does this lockpicking mechanic look familiar? I could spend an hour on Fallout 4's UI alone. But instead, I'll just focus on the gun modding interface. If you want to mod a gun, it's simple. You need to have put points in the perk. You need various resources like screws, oil, gears, aluminum, and adhesive. And you can craft the mod. But if you've collected various guns of a type and want to borrow parts from each, you can do that too. But the process is a major game fail. Let's say I have this Institute pistol with an overcharged capacitor, and I have this Institute gun with a beam focuser and long recon scope, and I have this Institute gun with an improved long barrel and full stock. I want to take the improved long barrel and full stock from this gun and put them on the pistol with the overcharged capacitor. And I want the beam focuser and long recon scope from this gun. The cool part about Fallout 4 is I can. But it's a bit... Can't I just remove the scope? No, the game won't let me. So I have to swap out the part with an equivalent part, such as standard sights. And if I don't have any on hand, I have to spend crafting materials to make a part I don't intend to use just to swap the part out. I also have to do this for the barrel and for the stock. And it doesn't look like my animation. It looks like this. Here, I'll actually make the gun I described earlier. What a hassle! Why can't I just break a gun down into components? Thank you, Ghost Recon Wildlands. This is a great lesson in how to sabotage the coolest feature in your game. It was such a chore to do it efficiently, I eventually gave up and just crafted my own mods using resources. This is the game actively working against me. So, am I saying Bethesda doesn't make good UIs? Honestly, I don't think we've ever seen them try. The UI for Starfield may be their first attempt. The UI footage we've seen certainly looks attractive, clean, and usable. But only after trying to use it will we know if it functions to make the game better or worse. Getting around in Skyrim and Fallout 4 are basically the same. You can walk, you can run, you can jump. In Skyrim, if you're crouched, sprinting won't take you out of the crouch pose as it will in most games. Also worth noting, you can't jump from a sprint, but you can in Fallout. In Skyrim you can ride a horse, and Fallout 4 has power armor, which brings no traversal advantages except the ability to survive long falls. And an optional jetpack mod for high jumps.
Well, what else could you want?
How about vehicles? Skyrim gets a pass for the horses, but has no working boats despite having many lakes and decorative boats. In Fallout, there are no drivable vehicles, despite vertibirds appearing all over the place, and functioning robots, blimps, a monorail to Nuka World, and working trucks and APCs. In Starfield, it seems like you won't be able to land or launch your ship yourself. It looks like it'll be a cutscene every time, So that makes me sad. But what about vehicles for exploring planets after landing? Will there be vehicles? We know there will be a jetpack and zero-G areas. The Starfield wiki says there will be sliding, which I haven't seen evidence of, but if it's there, it will be a Bethesda first. Here are other traversal mechanics not found in Bethesda games. Vaulting. Mantling. Grappling hook. Gliding.
Hanging.
Did I mention boats and drivable vehicles? I'm not saying Starfield should have all of these traversal mechanics, but what are the chances that it will have any of them? And don't tell me there's a mod for that. This isn't about mods. This is about the game Bethesda will deliver. And one other thing. How about companions that don't get in your way as a traversal mechanic? D-Dog never got in my way.
Good dog.
Nor did my 3 squad mates in Wildlands. Dogmeat did.
Well, clipping through characters isn't very realistic.
Really? How about a companion that's blocking my way and there's no mechanic to say, excuse me, may I squeeze by? Are we going for realism here or frustration? Do we think the companions will get in the way in Starfield? It's also worth noting, even when I was trying to be stealthy in Fallout 4, my companion often started firefights with enemies. I hope they've addressed that in Starfield. Skyrim and Fallout 4 both have a crouch for sneaking, but it's just about useless unless you dump points into stealth stats, which I assume just decreases your detection radius to the point that you basically don't have one. Gameplay-wise, it's exactly the same as when you started the game. And that's the problem. Outside of silent daggers, crouching, and low-light conditions, these games don't have any stealth mechanics, like cover systems and sneaking from cover to cover.
Nothing to report.
Hiding in foliage.
Calm down.
Hiding in anything. Crawling while prone. Throwing distractions. Lures. Cloaks. Corner attacks. Drop attacks. Lethal takedowns. Non-lethal takedowns. Peeking. Interrogations.
Spit it out.
You got no idea what I'm capable of.
I'm talking, all right?
I'm not saying Starfield should have all of these stealth mechanics, but what are the chances that it has any of them? In my video on the combat of sleeping dogs, I ranked 5 games for their melee combat, putting Batman at the bottom. Skyrim would rank even worse. For a game with so much combat, it's amazing how simple it is. Attack, power attack, block. Kudos for including a shield bag. Fallout 4 has melee weapons, but most of the game's weapons are guns. And gun combat is as basic can get. Shoot, aim and shoot, pull back behind cover if needed. Thing is, the power armor made me so tanky, I could basically take on anything just standing in the open. Here are the melee combat mechanics Bethesda's games haven't had. Evading. Attack left or attack right. Lock on.
I don't like where this is going.
Combos. It's no wonder everyone plays as a stealth archer. I'm not saying Starfield should have all of these melee mechanics, but what are the chances that it has any of them? Here are the ranged combat mechanics Bethesda games haven't had. Shooting over cover. Shooting around corners. Diving. Drones.
Where the hell are they?
And don't talk to me about VATS. A mechanic that does the aiming and shooting for the player in an open world game isn't a bonus. It's a crutch. I'm not saying Starfield should have all these ranged mechanics, but what are the chances that it will have any of them? Take away the jetpack, and this combat looks just as stilted as Fallout 4's. This was an opportunity to really do something different. We've seen forward-shooting space combat before, like as far back as 1983. Ubisoft showed us how creative ship-to-ship combat could be with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, with lumbering vessels, rams, arrows, fire arrows, and javelins. I'm not saying Bethesda should have copied Odyssey. I'm saying they should have studied and tried to outdo Odyssey. Instead, it appears they studied and tried to outdo 1983's Star Wars. The footage makes it seem like there's nothing more than basic shooting. The Starfield wiki states that missiles can be added, and boarding enemy vessels and taking them over from the inside will be part of the game, which both surprised and delighted me. It's just too bad the gunplay and ranged combat mechanics look so weak.
You can build your own outposts. You can choose where and how to build each one.
In Fallout 4, I built over 20 different settlements, each with water and food production, workers, scavenging stations, and resource storage. Each had beds and defense. But here's the thing, they didn't matter much, especially because I was always only a fast travel away from even the farthest one. The base building mechanics in Fallout 4 are extensive and creative, but 90% of it is just cosmetic. Sure, if you're the kind of person who enjoys building a virtual mansion just for fun, go to town. But the base building is lacking in importance. The player barely needs them. In contrast, a game like Subnautica has bases that are more vital to the gameplay. Scanning rooms, used to locate resources in areas, can only be attached to bases. They are the only places to recharge batteries and the vehicles. They are protection from hostile creatures. And they're a place to store resources and cultivate. And since Subnautica has no fast travel, having multiple bases makes more sense. So here's the big question. Will base building in Starfield feel vital to the game, as it did in Subnautica? Or will they have minimal benefit, as they did in Fallout 4? Or will they be completely unnecessary, as the houses were in both Skyrim and Fallout. I know I'm not the first person to point out, what are we calling this? Laser mining? There are at least 3 other games that use laser mining. If you're going to borrow another game's idea, borrow a better one. May I suggest the mining mechanics from Homeworld or StarCraft? How fun would it be if you had a little team of mining drones you could assign to different resources? And you could make a kind of management sim game out of it, as the team grows and requires maintenance. Maybe that comes later in the game? Bethesda games excel at world building, crafting mechanics, and incrementally boosting stats, which isn't really something to excel at. But if there were a game award for buffing as a game mechanic, Bethesda would be nominated every time.
Congratulations!
But the games are light on player mechanics. Take a look at 4 different Skyrim skill trees. In the sneak tree, none of these are skills. They're just stat boosts on things a player can already do. Not triggering pressure plates is a new skill, but it's passive, so the player benefits from it without doing anything. Only crouching during combat introduces a new executable skill, and silent roll is the only new mechanic. In the destruction tree, these are all the stat boosts. Frost paralyzing enemies, fire damage making enemies flee, and shock disintegrating enemies are passive benefits. The only new mechanic is dual casting for an overcharge effect, which kinda sounds a lot like a stat boost. In the two-handed tree, all but 1 are stat boosts, with a couple passive chances to paralyze or decapitate. Sideways power attacks now hit multiple opponents is the final passive bonus. But there are no new mechanics here. The player fights exactly as they did when they first swung a longsword. Finally, in the archery tree, 4 are stat boosts. 2 more offer passive chances to stagger or paralyze. And zooming while aiming is the only new mechanic, with a passive time stretch. It continues on like this, all the way through Fallout 4. It's fitting that they stopped calling them skills, and instead identified the stat buffs as perks. I don't think most of them qualify as skills. Can you guess where this is going?
With character creation, you'll pick a background that gives you 3 starting skills.
Hold on. Let's see those starting skills. Buff, 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 buff. These 3 actually qualify as skills: a hacking perk, a tactical timeout, and culinary skills. None of them appears to introduce new playable mechanics. And don't tell me about Outer Worlds. That game bored me for exactly the same reasons. These kinds of games, you don't have to get good. Get barely competent is kind of the high bar. There's not much to get good at. There's not much to learn. Just stuff numbers into your character and you'll find the game gets easier as you go. Now, it needs to be recognized that most games include stat buffs as part of their leveling trees. But better games also have a large variety of skills, actual skills, and tools, like evade moves, lures, drones, combos, vaulting, tie downs, covers, active reload, etc., that change how players can approach challenges. Fallout 4 and Skyrim are both games you don't get good at. You only need to grind until your stats are so high, nothing else matters. But if you thought Skyrim and Fallout 4 were good games, if you played them more than once, if you like min-maxing your stats, if you're in it for the base building options that go way beyond anything you'd need to complete the game, ditto that for spaceships. If you're in it for the story, or you're in it for the immersive world, if you're that kind of gamer, and you're still wondering if you're going to like Starfield, yes! Yes! Starfield is definitely going to deliver for you. There's no doubt. And whether you like Bethesda games or not, I'm certain Starfield will still be their best game yet. And however it plays, it's clearly going to look amazing. On the other hand, if you value gameplay, like stealth mechanics, tactical combat, diverse traversal options, and emergent systems colliding in unexpected ways, not only has Bethesda never led the industry in these areas, they are so far behind that just ripping off better games would still qualify as a fresh start. As it appears Starfield will continue the trends set by Skyrim and Fallout 4, I believe I will be bored playing Starfield, as bored as I was playing its predecessors.
No thanks.
But, as this Reddit user stated,
Who cares? If you enjoy something, you enjoy something.
right, there will be many, many people who will love this game. If you like this video, I'd also like to recommend my video on how I'd fix Assassin's Creed Odyssey's recruitment system, or my video on how the combat of sleeping dogs is way better than Rocksteady's Batman. Thanks for watching.